The name Michael Adamo strikes fear into the heart of pretty much all tournament poker players. He went on a $9 million heater recently in 2021, and that includes winning the $300,000 buy-in Super High Roller Bowl. He is smashing it. In this hand, from the Triton Poker High Roller Series, he shows Chris Brewer why he is considered to be one of the greatest tournament players of all time.
He is piling it in there. Adamo has no showdown value whatsoever. Oftentimes when you have no showdown value, you do tend to skew toward ambitions of winning the pot. Adamo doing everything he can to remain stoic and give away nothing in this situation.
I really can't see Brewer giving up at this point with 2 queens.
But can Chris Brewer find a way to defeat the end boss? Let's find out on this hand for PokerNews.com.
Fascinating young man at just 27 years of age has accomplished a tremendous amount in poker.
Yeah, I didn't realize he was that young. He's quite mature for his age.
Internet.
I felt like I was way dumber than him at 27.
At 27, I was still breaking mice against my bedroom wall as you were check raising me in spots that I didn't think you could.
But it wasn't
online.
far after that.
Meanwhile, 3-4 suited now for Adamo on the button. He will open it up to 3,000.
And just so everybody knows, I mean, right now these players are quite deep. The blinds are 501K. So Adamo has 375K. That's nearly 400 big blinds. So a hand like 4-3 suited plays a lot nicer here when you're that deep.
You can afford to speculate.
You can definitely afford to speculate. So, and you'll see also when you're this deep, these
like 190 to salt,
out of position 3-bets that Brewer just implemented here.
On the strength of 2 queens,
Over
small
6x.
blinds.
So it was a 3x open, so the sizes are all bigger, and this 19, that's more than 6 times the amount of the
Our screen name
raise.
is actually like exactly
A lot
the same. I
meatier
just
than
thought
we
of
would
that.
normally be
Mine are
accustomed
my
to
3
at
initials,
shallower
my
depths
birth
at this
year.
stage in a tournament.
That's so funny. It's like the same screen name.
So yeah, and normally with 4 high even suited here in a tournament, you would give that up.
We are playing 200 big blinds deep early in this $50,000 six-handed tournament in Cyprus. Michael Adamo apparently already busted somebody. He is up to 400,000 chips already. He opens it up to 3,000 on the button, 3 big blinds with 4-3 of spades. Over to Chris Brewer. He 3-bets to 19,000. 6.33x the initial raise from the small blind with pocket queens. You may say, why 3-bet so big? Don't you want to get called? You got to realize that you don't especially want to get called when you are out of position, especially against someone like Michael Adamo, who will put you in very difficult spots sporadically from time to time when it makes logical sense, and sometimes when he just feels like crushing you. So re-raising big in this spot is actually perfectly fine and viable, because if Adamo calls, fine, you just cut off a lot of his implied odds with suited connectors, with random unpaired hands, etc. And if he folds, whatever, it's not the end of the world. If anything, maybe that'll make him slow down raising on the button just a little bit, which is fine as well. So he does 3-bet big with 4-3 of spades. I'm kind of surprised Adamo just didn't fold this one. I realize that you should definitely call with some suited connectors here, but 4-3 suited is a pretty bad one. But hey, like I said, Adamo comes to play, and he is ready to battle. So he makes the call, and we see the flop. Pocket queens against 4-3 suited.
But playing so deep, a suited connector has a lot more potential, because when you do make a hand, you can win hundreds of big blinds as opposed to 40 or 50 or 60.
And here on the paired 2-spade board, some of that potential is showing itself as Adamo has picked up a spade draw up against queens and tens, and Brewer has followed through for just 10,000, significantly downsized, just a quarter pot, the sizing.
Yeah, so Adamo's basically always continuing here, but now against so small a bet, his decision is whether or not he calls or raises. So, let's see what Adamo comes up with.
And the raise is 3x to 30K from Adamo as he poses a question to Brewer.
Do you have anything? And Brewer does have something. I think it's very likely he'll just end up calling this raise to see a turn card.
So right off the bat, we see the 10-10-5 flop, which is not what you want to see whenever you have pocket queens, because it's really easy for Adamo to have ace-10 suited, king-10 suited, queen-10 suited, jack-10 suited, 10-9 suited, 10-8 suited, 10-7 suited. Maybe even 10-6 suited if he decides to be insane. Who knows? And that's a lot of 10s. So I think Brewer has two options. Option number one is to make the standard small post-flop continuation bet, which is what he does. Or you could check and just give Adamo every possible opportunity to bluff with whatever nonsense he has. I think this is a spot where Brewer's just going to make roughly the GTO play in the spot, which is to bet frequently and small, I think. And that is what he does. And then Adamo, with his flush draw, has to decide if he wants to call or raise. Now, normally, when you have a draw that's getting really good odds to see the turn, you do not want to screw that up by raising and then risking getting re-raised. But this is a spot where Adamo really does not have to worry about getting re-raised at all, because Brewer's 3-betting range will not contain a whole lot of hands with a 10. Plus, even if Brewer does have a 10, he's not going to want to re-raise because it's really, really hard to get action. So this is a very, very nice spot for Adamo to put in a small raise like he does. Brewer bet 10,000, Adamo raised to 30, knowing he's going to get called a ton, with the intention of betting the turn and maybe even blasting it off on the river, whether or not you hit. And this is going to put Brewer's entire range, besides full houses and trips, in a really, really nasty spot. So Adamo does raise to 30,000 back to Brewer. Like I said, I think the only option is to call, because you definitely don't want to re-raise and get your money in drawing very, very thin against a 10. Brewer calls, we see the turn.
Obviously, it would be a disaster to inflate the pot further and face an additional raise from Adamo, who does not improve on this 8 of diamonds, given that the board is paired, and certainly 10x is a viable holding for Adamo, and every now and again he would balance by playing it quickly.
So here he's very likely to check. Oh, he already did check. And now Adamo has to decide whether or not he wants to bluff this or take the free card and try to get there on the river. So about a third pot. So if this is called, it sets up, there'll be about 164K in the pot, and Brewer will have 110K back. So it sets up about a 2/3 pot river shove, whether Adamo makes it or if he decides to continue his bluff. I really can't see Brewer giving up at this point with 2 queens. It's just much too strong a hand, and so now we're going to see a river.
The turn brings the 8 of diamonds, which is pretty much a blank. I suppose it does remove 10-8 of diamonds from Adamo's range. If he decided to be insanely splashy, it removes some 10-8 offsuits, although I don't think he has very many of those in his range. And I think Brewer has a pretty easy check and check call, which is exactly what he does. I do think Adamo, again, wants to keep betting the turn, kind of like because on the flop, he really should not expect to get raised all that often in this scenario, because it's really easy for Adamo to have a 10, which allows him to pretty reasonably bluff with his flush draws, like this hand, especially those that lack showdown value, because if you bet and your opponent folds, fantastic, and if you bet and they call, well, sometimes you're going to spike on the river, and sometimes you're going to be able to get them to fold on the river. I want to make it really, really clear. In this scenario, I have to presume Adamo is going to play trips this way, and a bunch of draws, being hands like flush draws, maybe backdoor flush draws like Queen 9 of clubs, stuff like that. Those would be very, very good hands to play in this manner. And then if you get raised, you can just easily let those hands go. You do have to be careful betting high equity draws that you have to fold to a shove. Like imagine Adamo had, I don't know, ace jack of spades in this scenario. He may want to put in the flop raise, but he may not necessarily want to bet the turn, because getting check raised off that would be a disaster because it has a ton of equity. May even be good enough to bet and call off, really. But with low equity draws, like gut shots and weak flush draws that have little to no showdown value, you very, very frequently want to keep betting the turn, even when the turn is a total blank. So he does bet. Brewer calls. Let's see what happens on the river.
And that river is an ace. Adamo has no showdown value whatsoever at this point. Now faces another check from Brewer, and oftentimes when you have no showdown value, you do tend to skew toward ambitions of winning the pot.
It seems pretty likely he's going to bluff here, given that he decided to bet the turn, and the ace is actually a hand at this point that
sitting down.
Brewer isn't super likely to have an ace after calling a raise and the bet out of position, unless it was maybe the nut flush draw. And yeah, just Adamo has 0 showdown, so he's probably going to make Brewer make a decision for all of that 111K.
And that tile that he put out there was not a bet. That was a time bank being utilized as Adamo mulls over his options. Ace-X suited in spades, especially given that Brewer is unblocking spades, would certainly be an option here, would it not?
Oh, yes. I believe if Adamo hit the ace, he would value bet aces and tens.
Oh, and he is piling it in there. And
let's take a second and be very honest with ourselves. What would you do with pocket queens early in a tournament against an extremely aggressive, battly opponent? Do you call and risk going broke right off the bat, or do you fold and wait for a better spot? Let me know what you would do in the comment section below. Oh, and let me know as well, do you want to see more crazy bluffs like this? If you do, make it really clear to me. Hit the like button down below, and also hit the subscribe button. I'll be sure to go through more crazy bluffs like this in the future. This is definitely an annoying spot. I don't, however, think the ace actually connects all that well with Adamo's range, because if you think about what I just said on the turn, I'm not sure a whole lot of ace-high spades keep bluffing. And if he did happen to have something like ace-2 of clubs, that may also not keep bluffing. So I think in this scenario, the ace is actually a reasonable enough card for Brewer, even though I know normally an ace is a very, very scary card for a hand like pocket queens. I'm not so sure that's the case this time. I think a king would be way worse, for example, because Adamo could easily have a hand like king 6 of spades, right? So if a random king came on the river, he's going to have top pair more often that will then consider going for value. Now you have to say, would a hand like top pair even go for an all-in shove here? And I think it definitely would, if Adamo happened to have a hand like ace jack of spades somehow. So this definitely does put Brewer in a tough spot, but I think it's still probably just a nasty call because a lot of draws miss. And if you think about the draws that Adamo would check raise the flop with, they would be flush draws, most of which missed, and backdoor straight draw, backdoor flush draw hands like Jack 9 suited. Maybe stuff like 6-5 suited. Notice all of these pick up some sort of additional equity when the 8 comes on the turn. So there are a ton of potential bluffs. Now the question becomes, would Adamo actually bluff those off? And, well, the answer is at least sometimes yes, because we see he has the 4-3 of spades. And I haven't played a ton with Adamo, but when I have played with him, he gets in there and he blasts it, and he puts you in a pretty nasty bluff catcher spot. So I think these queens are a reluctant call. It's nice that you don't have the queen of spades in your hand as well, because if you had the queen of spades, you know that then Adamo can't have stuff like queen 9 of spades and queen jack of spades that would very likely bluff. So the fact that Brewer does not have the spades, I think, is helpful. Even with the queen of spades, though, I'd still probably just cry and call it off. I know we're early in the tournament. I know it's no fun to either have to re-enter or go home. But whenever you are playing against someone who gets in there and battles hard, you got to realize that whenever you do make the slightly nitty folds by the river, you're just giving them bits of equity over and over and over again, and that's going to allow Adamo to consistently chip up. Now, sometimes his opponents are going to hero call, and he's going to lose a bunch of chips early. But I think this is a spot where you just have to find the call. Let's see what Chris Brewer does.
For Brewer, he definitely knows that some percentage of the time Adamo has busted spades here, and when we're unblocking those spades, it's more tempting to call. The problem now, however, is the arrival of that ace.
Yeah, well, I mean, Adamo can definitely play 3-10s like this, and definitely can play busted spades like this, but, you know, the ace actually gives the class of the ace-X suited hands that Adamo might have played this way. You know, now they're beating him. But one of the questions about that is, you know, does Adamo actually raise, you know, say like ace-4 of spades on the flop to the quarter size bet? Because that hand actually has some showdown, so that might be a flush draw that he flats there. So, you know, there is a question about really how many ace-X suited, you know, of spades Adamo really hits, which is, you know, so that's one of the questions Brewer's trying to work out, in addition to the other questions about 3-10s or busted
look
draws.
At the sizing, Rast. I mean, this is a huge overbet.
Well, no, because Brewer only has 111.
Oh, forgive me. Effective, the 111.
So it's you know, it's about 2/3 pot. Brewer does not have a spade, which at this point is good not to have a spade. So, you know, he ends up passing.
After a decent amount of deliberation, Chris Brewer does find the fold. I suppose he just thinks that either Adamo has not quite as many draws as I think Adamo has, or he thinks Adamo would have some ace highs that would then go for value. And if that's the case, then the fold becomes way more reasonable. Dicey spot. That's what Adamo does to people. He gets in there, he battles hard, and he often ends up raking in the pot. That's going to be it for today. If you enjoyed today's video, click the like and subscribe button below. Like I said, if you enjoy the bluffs, serious, I'm paying attention. If this gets a lot of likes, we'll show more fun bluffs by the wild players like Adamo. And if you don't like this, well, I guess we won't. It's up to you. Good luck in your games, have fun, and I'll talk to you next time.